Alrighty, I'm just gonna do a few more little adjustments here, and there we go. Alright, now say, I love daddy.
I love cheese.
I love daddy.
I love yummy cheddar cheese.
Okay, maybe a few more little adjustments. Hey everyone, and welcome to Groove Builders, the show where we create together. I'm your host, Disorderly Cone, and this is gonna be my flight friend today, Laika. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Metal Earth Graf Zeppelin, and this comes to us as a recommendation from you guys out there. I'm pretty excited to take a look at this Zeppelin. And I guess there's a couple of questions we need to ask, Laika. What kind of tools do you need to build this thing? And are there any difficult parts? Well, those are some good questions. Let's get down to the workbench and take a look at the package.
Groove Builders, welcome to the workbench. We have our Graf Zeppelin in some classic Metal Earth packaging. And if you're following along at home and yours looks slightly different, don't worry, the inside metal is exactly the same. The packaging here is just really old. Let's go ahead and take a look at the back. On the back, we get some instructions on how to build our model, followed by some history on the Graf Zeppelin. At the very bottom, we get a look at some other models in the series. And finally, on the right here, we have a QR code we can scan to get a 360 view of our model while we're building. This is great for adding little bits of detail onto our build, especially these little engines right here. All right, let's go ahead and open up our package. We have our instructions, and we have our metal. Two really good looking sheets, and not a whole lot of parts here. I thought there would be a lot more. Let's take a closer look at our instructions. Okay, so we have two big pages and not a whole lot of parts. This build shouldn't take too long. Looking closely, it seems like we have three different areas we might want to take a closer look at. The first thing, right here with putting our frames together. The second, forming the Zeppelin blimpy shape. And the third and final thing we're going to be taking a look at is adding all of our engines on. But before we get into it, we need to talk about the basics of metal model building for all those new builders out there. First things first, these metal models require us to cut out our pieces, then shape them using whatever we can. Once we have our parts correctly shaped, we can connect them together by bending and twisting our tabs. The way we bend or twist our tabs is indicated in the instructions by these circles and triangles. Personally, I always try to follow the instructions the first time when it comes to bending our tabs if I can. Then, when the build is complete, I'll go over everything again and change anything that might stand out. I like to make my tabs as invisible as possible. That's how you get that museum quality you hear so much about.
Okay, now next up we have our tools. What kind of tools do you need to build a Zeppelin? That's a good question. Timothy?
Hello, I am Timothy, the tool expert. Analysis of instructions indicates highest probability of success using nippers, tweezers, mandrels, and tapping punches.
Good analysis there, Timothy, and great job. Now, these are just our recommendations, and you really don't need anything but tweezers and nippers to get the job done. But of course, having the right tools will make it a lot easier for you. Now, we've looked at our instructions, and we have all of our tools. There's only one thing left to do. Are you stuck in a rut, feeling a little bit bent, lost in your instructions? Hi, I'm Dr. Disorderly Cone, and this is my bottle of Like and Subscribe. With Like and Subscribe, we can find a cure for all of your metal model needs. That's right, with just 2 clicks of Like and Subscribe, you'll find happiness at the end of your tweezers. Don't let this offer pass you by. Like and subscribe now. Seriously. I'm waiting. Good job! Alright, let's get to the build.
The Graf Zeppelin kit is an iconic rite of passage for anybody who loves Metal Earth. I know, this kit looks very basic, but believe me, it's not without its hardships. The first thing we're going to look at is adding the parts 1, 2, 3, and 4 together. These parts combined are the basic shape of our Zeppelin, and connecting them together correctly and having them all formed right is the key to having this model come together. Start by lining up parts 1, 2, and 4. When these are lined up correctly, you should be able to see right through all the insertion holes. Now we can insert part 3 and securely tighten it. Then, starting with part 2, choose from the top or bottom, then left or right. Regardless of where you start, you want to use the diagram to make sure that everything has the proper spacing. Once you have one side shaped, the other one should be pretty easy to mimic. When moving on to the second part of this step, in my case the lower half of my Zeppelin, you will have to make a lot of small adjustments to get everything to line up correctly. Just make sure to reference that diagram. When your frame looks good, it's time to add these pesky little details on. As we start adding these parts onto the Zeppelin, it's very important to make sure they line up, and once they are lined up, press as hard as you can to get a proper securement. The first one or two can be tricky, but you'll master it by the fifth one. Now that all of our details are on and secured, we got a really nice looking Zeppelin shape. And speaking of Zeppelin shapes, the second thing I want to talk about is getting part 18 in order. You will need something like a glue stick or a dapping set to help you get a good cylinder shape. I used my dapping set to get a really nice finish on part 18, but with me rubbing it like this, I accidentally scratched the crap out of it. Luckily, it's mostly on the inside, so you really don't see too much of it, but just try and be careful when shaping part 18. Now that we have a nice general shape, it's time to get a nice dome look on the front. Connecting these tabs though can be a little tricky. The best way I found to get them secured was to pre-bend all the tabs first, then connect them one by one. Once you have all the tabs connected and secured, you can go back and try forming them to get a really nice dome shape. But before moving on, double check to make sure none of the tabs accidentally popped out. Sometimes they can get loose when doing that final bit of forming. And speaking of loose parts, the third and final thing I want to talk about is forming and adding the engines to the Zeppelin. These pieces are little and can be hard to form. We have to make cylinder shapes with these small pieces, and sometimes they're attached to bigger pieces like with part 1. When forming any of the engines, I recommend finding something around the home to help you shape these tiny pieces. A toothpick can work great, but I'm going to use my step mandrel here. Regardless of what you use, make sure you take that item and then wrap the metal around the tool, being very careful not to bend the metal at the top or at the back where the propeller is. Once we have a good shape, it's time to add the engines onto the Zeppelin. Make sure to really secure the engines well. You don't want them moving around, and they can move around really easily. Once these are strongly secured, it's time to cap the engine off and bend the propellers into place. Try not to accidentally bend the frame when forming the last part with the propellers. It's easier than you think. Okay, not bad at all. In under 2 hours. Nice.
And there we go, Groove Builders. We did it. We built the Metal Earth Graf Zeppelin. And this build does look pretty neat when it's complete, especially with half of it being exposed like this. Now this build wasn't too difficult, and it's known for being one of the belts you need to get as a metal model collector. And I agree with that. There is some simplistic design in this, but there are some more complicated things like this giant piece back here that we have to cone and make look really nice. Getting everything to work out here can be a little bit complicated, and getting all the seams to line up too can be a little bit of a joy, but once you take the time, everything does look nice when it's complete. I can definitely recommend this for new builders out there that are looking for a little bit of a challenge outside of their first model. And if you're looking to add to your airships, this is where you need to go. And with that, Groove Builders, we're at the end of our show. I had a really good time building the Graf Zeppelin with you, and if you guys had a good time, don't forget to press that like button. For more videos like this, hit subscribe as well, so we got all kinds of really cool content coming out in the future. Want to help the channel grow? Check out groovebuilders.ca. We got all kinds of really cool models on there at great prices with free shipping with orders over $65 Canadian. Until next time, Groove Builders, keep building. Now, I'm gonna go find Leica and try to take to the skies. This should be fun.